Welcome to Daily Armor. Today we're in Luke chapter 5, looking at verse number 5. I'm actually going to read all of verses from verse 1 through verse 11, but we're going to be focusing on verse number 5. But we'll start with verse number 1, and it says, "And it came to pass that as the people pressed upon him to hear the word of God, he stood by the lake of Gennesaret, and saw two ships standing by the lake, but the fishermen were gone out of them and were washing their nets. He entered into one of the ships, which was Simon's, and prayed him that he would thrust out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people out of the ship. Now when he had left speaking, he said unto Simon, Launch out into the deep, and let down your nets for a draught. And Simon answering said unto him, Master, we have toiled all the night, and have taken nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word I will let down the net. And when they had this done, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes, and their net brake. And they beckoned unto their partners, which were in the other ship, that they should come and help them. And they came and filled both the ships, so that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. For he was astonished at all that were with him, at the draught of the fishes which they had taken. And so was also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, which were partners with Simon. And Jesus said unto Simon, Fear not, for henceforth thou shalt catch men. And when they had brought their ships to land, they forsook all and followed him." I want to focus on verse number 5, where Peter says to Jesus, he said, Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net. Now, this was strange instructions that Jesus had given Peter. Peter and the other men there, they were seasoned fishermen. This is what they did for a living. They had toiled all night. They had brought their nets in. That was a lot of work. They had to wash their nets, put them up correctly so they could dry out correctly, and it's a lot of work. Whether they caught anything or not, fishing is a lot of work, a lot of prep, a lot of putting away, and so there's a lot going on here. And they knew, if they were seasoned fishermen, which they were, then they would have known when the best possible times to catch were and all of that. But nevertheless, he's listening to the words of Jesus. Now, Jesus has used his boat and has pushed out a little ways so that he could expand the audience as far as being able to project his voice. And he's used Simon's ship to do that. And then at the end of teaching the people, then he gives Simon these instructions. And remember what he says. He says, now when he had left speaking, he said unto Simon, Launch out into the deep. He's telling him where to launch out to. This man that's Jesus, who was a carpenter. Most fishermen are going to be like, what does a carpenter know about fishing? Not a whole lot. But this was no ordinary carpenter, as we know. And he says to launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a draught. He's giving him some specific instructions. He's telling him where to go. He's telling him what to do. And he's also telling him what to expect. So if we look here and he says, let down your nets. Well, Peter has already brought all the nets in, washed them, all that hard labor, have to put everything in just right so that they can be, used again for the next for the next time that they try to go out fishing. And it just seems crazy. And you'll notice the way that he responds to Jesus, that he's like, Lord, this does not make any sense. So oftentimes when the Lord does give us instructions, we're going to be like, but Lord, this doesn't make any sense. Now, it's not going to go against what's in the scriptures. The Lord's never going to tell you to go do something that goes against the scriptures. He's not going to tell you to go out and kill somebody, or take revenge on somebody, or have an affair, or have steal something. He's never going to tell you things like that, because that goes against his word. But when the Lord Jesus, when he is the one speaking to you, when he's giving you a set of instructions, when he's giving me a set of instructions, then it's not always going to make sense. But that's what he tells us in his word. He's like, my ways are not your ways. The way I do things is going to be different than the way you do things. And the way I think about things, my thoughts are not your thoughts, saith the Lord. So the way that he does things doesn't always make sense. Yet, we want to be like Peter and say, nevertheless, at thy word, Lord, if anybody else had said this but you, I would not be doing this. If anybody else had told me to, pack up and move and go here, Lord, I wouldn't be doing this. If anybody else would have told me, Lord, I wouldn't be doing this but you, Lord. Nobody but you, Lord. And Peter says, nevertheless, at thy word, I will. And that's, kind of my challenge for myself today is, Lord, even if it doesn't make sense, even if I don't understand, even if it just seems so simple or strange or ordinary or, whatever the case may be, or if I just did that, Lord, I just did, and I didn't do any good. And he's saying, but now, expect a drought. He said, and remember the instructions, launch out into the deep. He's telling him where to go, and let down your nets. He's telling him what to do when he gets there, and for a drought. He's telling him what to expect. Expect a drought. What's a drought? A drought is that drawing in, that gathering up of those fish, that when you're fishing, it's catching. It's the haul that they bring in. And the haul that they had brought in, several hours before that was nothing. They brought in nothing. If you'll remember back in verse, let's see. They were washing their nets, and you'll look at Simon's response. He says, expect a drought. And Simon answering, verse number 5, said unto him, Master, we have toiled all the night and have taken nothing. They done put up their nets, and they had fished all night. They're worn out, they're tired, and they didn't catch anything. What they were saying was, the fish aren't here. They're somewhere else, but they're not here. And the Lord's saying, launch into the deep, let down your nets, which is a lot of work, but expect a drought, for a catch. The Lord knew that what he was doing, but we don't always know what he's doing or understand what he's doing, but we have to just do what Peter did and said, nevertheless, at thy word, I will. And in his particular case, let down the net. He will launch out. He will go through all this all over again. He will let down the net. And the nets were breaking, and he had to holler for James and John and say, hey, bring your ship over here. I'm going to go down. It was such a catch. It was such a huge draught of fish that it was about to sink him, and he had to ask for others to come help. And how exciting that this was. And you'll notice that it changed Peter. It completely changed because he did what Jesus told him to do. Then when he submitted, and that's the thing, is we have to submit to what he wants us to do, to go where he wants us to go, to do what he wants us to do. And then when he gives the increase, because obviously Peter, they tried their way, but their way, they toiled all night and caught nothing. But when Jesus gives the increase, it's going to be more than we can handle. And it's going to be shocking, and we're going to be amazed, and it's going to change our view of Jesus. And that's exactly what it did. It changed Peter's view of Jesus, because look how he responds. Verse number 8 says, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. So he went from calling him master, which is teacher, to, O Lord. This is God in flesh. This is, I should not even be in your presence. And he bowed down at the knees, at the feet of Jesus, and bowed down to his knees, saying, Depart from me, I am a sinful man, O Lord. He saw himself in the light of in the light of Jesus, and we all have to see ourselves in the light of Jesus. If you see yourself in the light of your siblings or your spouse or your neighbors or your coworkers or any of these other people, if you say, well, I'm doing better than they are, well, I have better morals than they have. Well, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. Then you're not seeing yourself through that in comparison to Jesus. You're not seeing yourself like Peter did here. Peter said, I am a sinful man, O Lord. He was a sinful man. I am a sinful woman. I sinned. It was for my sins that he died. And on this day of Good Friday, where we are thinking about that price that he paid for my sins, for the sins of the world, but then specifically mine, and then yours, you have your own sins that need to be forgiven. And that's exactly what he did on the cross, is that he paid that penalty, and then he offered that free gift of salvation, of forgiveness, of a whole new life, a whole new purpose, the true meaning of living, that being born again with a purpose, and God with the one with the plan. And so, but it starts with submitting to whatever Jesus has said. If he says you're lost and you need to be saved, submit to him and cry out to him and ask for forgiveness. If he says you gotta forgive somebody that did something that your view is that was unforgivable, he's saying forgive them because I have forgiven you, and what you've done is unforgivable as well. Because all of sin was unforgivable. But God made a way for it to be forgiven. We were all doomed with no hope, but with Jesus there's always hope, because he supplied the hope. He supplied the price. He paid the penalty. And then look how Peter views him. He says, for he was astonished at all that were with him at the draught of the fishes which they had taken. Not just Peter's life was changed, but the others that were around him, the others that were with him. There's James and John that had to bring their ship over and help with getting this net of fish in. Their view, they were astonished at what Jesus had done, and was amazed. And it says, and so was also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, which were partners with Simon. And Jesus said unto Simon, fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men. He's done it for a reason. He's doing it to show Peter what can happen when you do what I ask, when you submit to a life with me. And Peter, and they forsook all and followed him. So Peter, James, and John, they were just astonished and amazed, and they left behind all that they knew, all that they had, and they forsook all and followed Jesus. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.